This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Hey, it is Long Shots Golf Betting Podcast here on the VSiN Podcast Network. I'm Matt Brown. That is Wes Reynolds. That is Kelley Bydlon here for the final tournament of the season. Getting ready for football, and so golf's going to step out of the way here for a little bit as we get to the final 30 players over at East Lake. Before we get there, a little wrinkle that we have here. Since there's only 30 players in the tournament, we're going to hit on every single player that is in this tournament. Now, some guys will get a little bit more love than others. Those might be the dudes that we bet on here, but we will talk about every single player here in the field very, very quickly, because while we might not like them, you might, and so we will go ahead and get you some sort of commentary on all of those people. A little tip of the cap here. Wes Reynolds, Wyndham Clark last week. Kelley, if you would have seen, we had a very specific profile of golfer. Both me and Wes both just picked all the bombers basically in the entire tournament.
Yeah, you were smart guys.
I had Goddard, who I thought maybe would make a run at it, and instead just went backward right from the get-go and never got anything going there in that one. But Wyndham Clark goes out, and while he went backwards to start things out, and certainly was going to make it a little sweaty, decided to really close incredibly strong. And Wes, the $3.6 million for him, the 750 FedEx points, it moved him up a ton in the big time bonus pool as well for Wyndham Clark, and kind of under the radar, a sneaky good season for Wyndham Clark.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wyndham also clinches the spot for the President's Cup. By the way, the final six, or the first six, I should say, clinch their spot via points. And then Brandt Snedeker, I think, here in about a week or two, is going to pick the other six to see who is going to take on that international team. But Wyndham Clark, yeah, he fit the profile. Long, striping lad off the tee. And that's exactly what he was, even though he leaked some oil on Sunday and actually at one point lost the lead where he shared the lead, but never quite totally relinquished it. And we did play him in the without Scottie, so only 25-1, but still we don't complain about that. Scheffler, by the way, ends up T12 with the hand, foot, and mouth disease and what.
By the way, I want to let everybody
had.
know, all three of us are doing this at full strength. Like, none of us are hiding that we have some sort of disease from you while we do this podcast.
None of us have the measles or anything. Yeah. So
we're all good here.
Hopefully Scottie is removed from any affliction this week. But nevertheless, Wyndham Clark, I think, put himself right in the Player of the Year race. Usually the Player of the Year on the PGA Tour is kind of a fait accompli, right? Like, we know who it's going to be. Like, it's been Scottie for the last couple of years. But now it's like, okay, there's a few guys that could win this. I really think it's kind of a three-man race between Wyndham Clark, Scottie Scheffler, and Cameron Young, although Matt Fitzpatrick certainly has an argument. Chris Goddard, maybe Rory with that Masters win, especially if he wins here, but just the one win for Rory. I think Scheffler, Clark, and Cameron Young are probably the top three. So not only the money, but a lot to play for here in terms of PGA Tour Player of the Year and, different type of things. Obviously, everybody in this field this week, the top 30, get into the majors next year. So that's a hell of an accomplishment. But Wyndham Clark, yeah, great year this year. Keep in mind that he was like borderline to start the year. It's like, man, where's his game at?
He was not good.
And then he wins the Byron Nelson, and then it's like, oh, okay, he won a birdie fest, a win's a win. But then to win the U.S. Open, and even though he came back a little bit to the pack, he still, never lost the lead at Shinnecock Hills, and at one point had a 6-shot lead. And with all the jeering, probably because it was such a blowout, and he certainly got it a little bit on Sunday, too, because he was paired with Rory in the final group at Bellerive, he keeps surviving and keeps winning. And there's something to be said for that, when like you feel like the people are against you and you go out and close the door and birdie the final 3 holes to finish 3 strokes clear of the field. There's something to be said for that, I think, for Wyndham Clark.
No, absolutely. And by the way, long tease here. We'll be back next week with our personal awards. So not obviously the official awards, but just our awards that we will go in and give our Player of the Year, our Rookie of the Year, our Comeback Player of the Year, all the stuff like that. And so be sure and stick around and don't forget the feed next week, even though we are going to be done with this season after this week. And we'll jump kind of right into this since we need to get to all 30 players here. But like we said, it comes out afterwards that Scottie Scheffler dealing with a disease. This is one of those things where, guys, I don't know if anything will get done. We know the PGA Tour is in with the betting side of things. They're in with the fantasy side of things. They run an alt cast that is a bet cast specific and all of that. And I don't know, we talk a lot, Kelley, about, a guy accidentally touches the ball. Like, we never see him touch the ball, and like, we never see whatever, but the gentlemanly thing to do, the gentlemanly part of the game is you call the penalty on yourself. Like, you call the things. I don't know if we'll ever get an official injury report, if we ever get official something that comes out a day in advance or whatever it might be with all of this. But I do wonder if the tour at least goes to these guys and says like, hey man, like, look, at the end of the day, if you want to be a little bit more open with all of this stuff to our fans and to our whatever, like, we are the gentlemanly game here. We are the people, whatever. And instead of coming to the mic afterwards and people were wondering like, what the hell happened to Scottie Scheffler at one point dead last in that tournament? We find out like, oh, he couldn't hold the golf club because he had sores all over his hands and feet and inside his throat and all of this. And so, we've dealt with this with Collin and his back earlier in the year. How bad was it? Whatever, all this stuff. So like, I do wonder if they just in the offseason kind of just a little bit of a nudge and say, maybe let's be a little bit more open about this.
Yeah, I actually have, this is something I've gotten, my feelings have gotten stronger about, I think, just even over this year. I think something like that could happen, Matt. I don't really know how much more than that, though, we should expect. Honestly, these are all independent contractors, right? We've brought this up before. There's no collective bargaining agreement between these players in a league, where this, where injury reports and this type of stuff in other leagues, gets negotiated, because it is something that needs to be negotiated by both sides and agreed to. And you know what? I will bring this back. I don't know if I brought this up on Long Shots or me and you talked about it on a numbers game. I thought Adam Levitan did a great podcast with Andrew Novak, and this was a topic that they discussed. And I thought Andrew Novak was incredibly honest about just like he just didn't think it was realistic to ask guys to do this, and mainly because he was kind of making fun of golfers. Like, golfers are soft, and like there are times where, I'm going to paraphrase here, but like, he's like, we wake up sometimes and those days where you wake up and you slept funny and your neck hurts all day while you're at work. Well, sometimes in golf that really happens, and that's enough to affect your golf swing and force you to withdraw. So he was kind of saying like, that nobody's going to offer up stuff like that makes them look soft when that actually is going to be the case. So I thought his comments on it were very, very interesting. And I think to add on to that, to me, it might start to become more misleading than helpful with certain guys. I mean, I don't, if does Scottie Scheffler have to put something down on his injury report for this week? And we don't know how he's going to be affected on a Tuesday versus a Saturday of a week after an illness. I don't know. I do think
sure, but I mean, that just all that does is though. I mean, like you're willing to assume the risk or not, but at least you're going in knowing what you're dealing with, and that's kind of like what I'm talking about here. Like, I mean, sure. We don't know for sure how this disease is going to be affecting him this week or by Saturday or with all the medicine and all of that. And yeah, Collin can come in and say like, look, I'm going to play through this back thing and, I hope whatever. But Wes, I think just for me is I'm not saying that it has to be, you have to be held to all of this. I'm not saying that you have to tell us you're definitely playing hurt or you're whatever, but like some sort of something to where at least us out here, and like we said, the PGA Tour's bought into what we do. They bought into the fantasy side of things. They bought into all of this, and they're trying to capitalize off of all of it. Just where we at least know what we're getting ourselves into, right? Like, we assume risk with betting as it is anyway, right? And so like, I can then just assess, you know what? I'll take the chance on him withdrawing. Or you know what? Scottie Scheffler's the best player in the world. Maybe he still is, even with wounds on his hand or in his throat or whatever, but at least I know going into it what I'm dealing with as opposed to finding out after the fact.
Yeah, looking for just some kind of happy medium here, because keep in mind, some players are going to be more candid and open than others, certainly. But now with sports betting, with all the national books and, the leagues in bed with them, you have to be able to have some kind of openness. Like it actually happened last night in a WNBA game where a star player, it was said not going to start, minutes restriction, and then eventually starts and plays over 30 minutes. And, you need that because people will obviously, you're going to bet on information. That's what you do. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis where it's like, okay, is there an injury? How's that going to change a rotation? Is there load management involved, especially if like the NBA? There's already load management on the tour in the fact that you don't have to play every single week if you don't want to. We've seen that with Rory McIlroy this year, being able to skip some of these signature events. But yeah, you would appreciate, I think, a little bit more candor. I mean, probably, I guess, wouldn't have played the without Scottie market. Not that there was that much of a difference in the price or the net profit, but still, it's like, okay, if a guy is that bad, then maybe I'm just going to go ahead and take Wyndham, straight up to win the event, who I thought certainly had a chance to win. But when Scottie Scheffler wins by 8 strokes the week before, it's like, okay, do I really want to get in front of him, or do I just want to take him out of play? So hopefully they can find some kind of balance here in this new player group. They don't really necessarily have a union or anything on the PGA Tour, but they kind of function as such. And, hopefully they can make something new with this new commissioner, Brian Rolap, and just be a little bit more, I think, transparent.
Heading over to the Tour Championship here at East Lake. It is a course we are quite familiar with. Been here for a long time now. There has been some renovation, big time renovation 2024. So I don't know how much course history stuff you really want to put into play with this week. Some little fun facts here in this one. We have 6 debutants. That's Chris Wrighton, Alex Fitzpatrick, Ryan Gerard, Minwoo Lee, Alex Smalley, Ryan Fox. The only rookies in the field are Alex Fitzpatrick and Christopher Wrighton. Of course, Tommy Fleetwood is your defending champion here at this one. It is the only time he's won on U.S. soil. 12 of the 30 have not actually won on the PGA Tour this year. 18 different guys actually did win on the PGA Tour this year. And Alex Smalley, the only guy in the field who's never won on the PGA Tour ever to be in this field with this. Wes, like we said, we know this course pretty well. You do the write-up over at VSiN.com. Another reason for people to come VSiN Pro. But real quick on this, what are we looking at here at East Lake? It's another par 70 that's going to be a pretty long test for these dudes.
Yeah, East Lake Golf Club, about 5 miles east of downtown Atlanta, oldest course in Atlanta. Designed by Donald Ross back in 1913. You mentioned the renovation. Andrew Green did it in 2024, so it got lengthened a little bit. The stock yardage, I believe, on the card this year is going to be 7440. Par 70. Remember, it went to a par 71 back in 2024, where number 14 played as the easiest hole of the week, a par 5. So they shortened it a little bit, and it's now a lone par 4. Tiff Eagle Bermuda greens. They sit a little bit lower. They're not elevated, but they are larger, about a little over 6,200 square feet on average, 12.5 to 13 on the stem. So with those renovations, they refurbished the bunkers and the greens. They wanted to recontour the fairways to kind of create more movement around the course. It is Zoysia fairways, so very similar to what they saw at Memphis at Southwind a couple weeks ago at St. Jude, and then Bellerive last week. They thought that East Lake was too straightforward, so they wanted to, give them more options. Other than just rip and driver off the tee, added more fairway bunkers. They have 8 holes with water in play. You do have some slightly narrow fairways at about 30 yards wide, 3.5-inch Bermuda rough. But in terms of how it played last year, what was the winning score for Tommy? 18 under par, 262. So it didn't really play more difficult. Mm-hmm. I don't think necessarily. I think Morikawa, by the way, was I believe 22 under in the par 71 in 2024. So we've had 2 years since this renovation, and it really hasn't played more difficult. It was kind of like very meat and potatoes, very straightforward, not a lot of character to the course. So they've tried to change it around a little bit. Some of the correlations, Southwind and Bellerive because of the Zoysia, Quail Hollow, Augusta a little bit, maybe some PGA National, other Ross designs if you're looking for that correlation, Pinehurst number 2, Sedgefield, Detroit, Oak Hill. I think you could look at it in that kind of way. But if you look at like the past form, I guess here, player to player, usually guys that play well here always play well here because they're usually in this field where there's only 30 players. So you see a lot of guys that have very high finishes or even multiple wins here. So should be a good event and a fun event. It was fun last year getting the winner with Tommy Fleetwood as he finally broke through after he broke our hearts in Memphis 2 weeks beforehand. So probably is going to play the same, I think, guys. When I was looking at the weather that did get a lot of rain actually in the last month in Atlanta. So you're probably going to get soft greens, and they're going to water it anyway because, high 80s, low 90s in Atlanta this time of year. So it's going to be hot. So you would think receptive greens. Didn't look like there was much wind in the forecast. So you're probably looking 20 under par, 18 to 20 under par for the eventual winner here, I think.
Kelley, as we kind of take a look at this, and we normally would go through what we would put in our models right now, but as we go through 30 different players, we'll get to all of the stuff that ended up in our models and why we did or didn't put the stuff in with all of that. I think for me, from a course perspective, the only thing that really kind of stood out for me here is it does look like there's going to be a little bit of weather. It does look like it's going to soften things up. If anything, that just, I think, accentuates length a little bit more for me this week. You're not going to get the typical rollout type of stuff, but you do want to be in these fairways. We've talked about Zoysia several different times here on the pod. If you aren't familiar with the different grasses, Zoysia is kind of a wiry, hard type-ish grass. So if you're in the fairway, like the ball is just sitting up like nice and perfect. It's like these dudes absolutely love hitting off of these type of fairways and then venturing off from that and getting into the Bermuda rough, which is going to be 3.5 inches. So it could be some weird lies if you are to miss these fairways. So obviously long and straight is always what we love. I mean, we love long and straight, but I think long and straight is certainly something we're going to be looking at here this week.
Yeah, absolutely important. And kind of Wes was rolling through that stuff. Actually, of course, it's been playing just easier and easier kind of as this has gone on, even after renovations. A little easier to gain off the tee here the past couple years. We saw amazing scoring last year. Look, it's serious rough. You want to be playing out of the fairway for sure. We've seen over the years here that distance matters for sure. Strong approach game, bigger greens. This is another one of those courses I kind of bring up where around the green does matter a little bit here, but we just rolled through final scores. If you're scoring 20 under, how much can you be playing around the green? I think that one's worth mentioning again this week. So, that is pretty straightforward. Looking for quality ball strikers this week, man.
So let's go ahead and we'll start here at the bottom of the board. And, I'll run through just for, since Kelley pulled up DraftKings, I'll run through just the BetMGM odds so we can do a little bit of comparison type of stuff right here. But if we're looking at these like super long shot guys, I mean, there's only one triple digit guy in the field at MGM. That is Ryan Fox. Closely behind him is Alex Fitzpatrick, and he is actually triple digits over at FanDuel. So 2 different triple digit guys in the field this week. If you look at my models, they're all pretty much towards the bottom. Ryan Fox 29th for me in all of these. Alex Fitzpatrick down in the low 20s. And guys, not that I say that there's zero chance. Obviously, we didn't think that Ryan Fox was going to win a major this year or anything like that. And certainly there are courses I think that are better fits for Alex Fitzpatrick, who, by the way, play has definitely tapered off here as he started out super hot when he got on tour. That being said, look, fun story for Ryan Fox for me this year. I think that's great. I think Alex Fitzpatrick getting on tour, winning the joint event with his brother is great, and obviously showed out pretty well too. But like I said, play starting to kind of taper off here for him a decent amount. So never any consideration for me whatsoever. No consideration from a placement market standpoint. No consideration from a head-to-head standpoint at all for either one of those guys. Wes, just, again, fun season for Ryan Fox. Came out of nowhere to get that, but I don't think a guy you want to waste your money on this week.
Yeah, first timer here, as is Alex Fitzpatrick. And if you go like season long, Alex Fitzpatrick's probably going to model out a little bit stronger because he had that run of 4 top 10s in the signature events. He was top 10 at the Cadillac, top 10 at the Truist, top 10 at the Memorial, top 10 at the Travelers. But you look the last several finishes, miscuts, 71st, 61st, 61st, 44th. So season-wise, he's going to model strong, but in terms of like last 24, last 36, if you go by rounds, probably doesn't model as strong, but certainly a really good year for him and getting to top 30. Hell of an accomplishment considering he didn't really play the full season and didn't even get a PGA Tour card until April after he won an event in India on the DP World Tour. But, I'm not sure he's ready to win an event like this, even though season-wide he did model out a little bit more strongly.
Yeah, Kelley, next on the odds board here, Akshay Bhatia, just absolute nightmare season off the tee for Akshay, a guy that we've all, I think, bet at some point or another over the last couple of years. But I mean, you just an absolute nightmare off the tee this season for him, and you can really see it in the results.
Yeah, I think this is just kind of recapping everything so far. This of guys that I have no interest in betting. All three of these guys, but probably Ryan Fox more so than Akshay or Alex Fitzpatrick. Like you said, we were loving Alex Fitzpatrick earlier in the year, but man, those numbers recently have been god awful. And then Akshay, I just not enough firepower off the tee here, in my opinion, to contend. He would have to be near perfect everywhere else. We've seen Akshay do that before, and when he gains off the tee, gains on approach. If you're watching at home and that putter's working, you can go play with anybody, but not the guy in the right form for the right course that I'm looking for this week.
You get down here a little bit further. The next guy on the odds board, Alex Smalley. I mean, Wes, when we look at Smalley here, I mean, one of these things is not like the other. Yes, Tommy Fleetwood got his first win on American soil here at this, but Tommy Fleetwood was knocking on the door for a very, very, very long time and certainly is a much, much higher class player than we're getting here with Smalley. Cannot imagine that the breakthrough, given this field and everything that's going on, is going to be this week for Smalley.
Yeah, that'd be very tough to see, even though, the ball striking numbers are pretty consistent through most of the season. But he really got on a heater in like the spring, where if you were just going by that 2 months, he was like playing like a top 5 player in the world, where he had a couple runners up, right, at the PGA and then at the Zurich, also was third at the Charles Schwab. So he has maybe peaked a little bit, even though he had a respectable 7th at the Wyndham. Yeah, I don't see it. I think a win is coming. Maybe in the fall series is where we see Alex Smalley get that first win.
Yeah, this is Matt. I will say this Smalley, I was back to considering more this week. Those approach numbers are kind of back locked in, like we saw earlier in the year. Those are real strong. 4 weeks in a row where he's gained on approach. 3 weeks in a row with a top 25 finish or better. I'd like to see a little bit more off the tee going on, like we saw earlier in the year, but it's a field of 30. Smalley at a long number for like a top 10. It was something that I considered this week. It's not somebody I just kind of skip by.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin any of our awards or anything. Maybe we'll make this a category for next week as well. As far as biggest disappointments on the season, I'm sure Minwoo Lee will be at least a contender for a lot of people. I mean, this was a guy that we thought maybe had really, really turned a corner, might even win, and not only win, but win a couple of different times over the course of the year. Now, he does have a couple of high finishes, Kelley, but again, no consistent play from him whatsoever. And we like to see these kind of green across the board. You really only see that once over the course of the season, and you see that outright second that he got at the Genesis. But outside of that, there just has not been a convergence of all of the different parts of the game over the course of a tournament for him.
Yeah, I mean, two very different levels of play right now that we're getting out of Minwoo Lee and Chris Goddard, but I do think they are similar in the fact that, man, they are so talented on so many aspects of their game, but this is where we always talk about approach being so important, right? And it's just the guys that you can start off with great approach games and build out from there are just more consistent throughout the year. It just makes it tough with Minwoo, right? He's great off the tee. That putter can get hot as hell. You can be a very good putter. You can be great around the green. Just for this week, man, not in form at all. Those approach numbers have been disgusting the past few weeks. Not someone I'm wanting to touch at all.
Wes, we saw these odds for Minwoo get down pretty low over the course of the season. You can find him in a 30-person tournament at 60-1 as we are recording this right now. Just kind of let you know where the betting market thinks of his game.
The chef has been cooking like a donkey, as Gordon Ramsay would say in Hell's Kitchen. He has not played well. He's still a bomber off the tee, but here's what'll happen with Minwoo. He'll probably win somewhere in Europe in the fall, or he'll probably win somewhere in Australia and be like, okay, man, now he's turned the corner. And but I don't see it here. He's still long off the tee, but this is a guy after he won that event in Houston last year. You're figuring he's going to win a lot more regularly, and it just has not come this season.
Wes is so right, by the way. He's going to show out somewhere in the fall. We'll all get excited about him again. And in January, we'll be firing back on Minwoo. So
yeah, and then we'll just be like, man, if he can just, and then it's like filling
right.
It's like just hit a 7-iron.
Yeah, and it's whatever it is. Yeah, it's like if he could just, and then it's just like that's been my story with Minwoo, who, by the way, also top of my list, going to be pretty close to the top of my list of dudes that I've lost the most money on over the last couple of years as well. Christopher Wrighton is next on the odds board. You can find him as long as 70-1. out there. The best actually the best number that you can find, and by best, I mean like where he's actually taking at least a little bit of money, is at MGM where he's 55, but 70 at FanDuel, 70 at Caesars, 70 at Bet365 here for him. Did get a win on tour this year though, Kelley Bydlon.
Yes, he did over at the Truist. This is another guy that we got excited about early in the year, kind of a breakout star on the PGA Tour this season, and another guy who his play has begun to fall off just at least a little bit. I guess the putter's been working well the past few weeks. He does it T22 last week and the T18 at the Open, where he was gaining strong with the putter. But if you're watching at home, as you can see, those ball striking numbers just kind of started to fall off between off the tee and on approach. Look, someone that I mean, I bet a few times this year in different markets, not really a guy that was popping for me this week. In fact, last 16 rounds, Chris Rayton is my last rated. He is 30 of 30. How about
he
that?
was like 28 for me.
Yeah.
And, the guy, I guess you got to call him a success story, considering he was the only one of those DP World Tour qualifiers. Remember, the top 10 not exempt on the DP World Tour and those Race to Dubai rankings get PGA Tour cards. So he was the only one of those 10 that did make the top 30. So a hell of a year for him, winning at the Truist, despite the fact that I had both runners up in that event. But I'm not bitter about that. He has kind of like, I guess peaked, if you will. Hasn't had a top 10 since the Memorial where he was sixth. So didn't really spark a lot of interest for me, but he's another guy I could see like somewhere in October winning somewhere in Europe. And it's like, okay, now that he's dropped in class, because now he's playing in all these signature event fields. When you were playing against weaker DP World Tour fields, that's a big step up in class, but did get a win down there at Quail Hollow. So certainly capable, but I don't see it this week.
Yeah, and just a reminder, if you did listen to Long Shots throughout the season, then you learned a lot about Chris Rayton and the Rayton family, who are, he is the grandson or son of Magnus. God dang it, now I'm forgetting. Father Magnus Rayton, CEO of Rayton Capital, 383rd wealthiest group in the world, worth $9 billion, gentlemen, $9 billion.
He's a little bit like the DP World Tour Maverick McNeely, although
that's right.
The right-hands, I think, have more wealth than certainly the McNeely family, who has plenty of their own. But yeah, absolutely. When I read his story, I was like, wow.
As the podcast is titled, we like long shots here, and it's always great to see an underdog story with a guy comes down that.
Good to see a guy that's had humble upbringings go ahead and
never
just
had
kill
a
it.
shot. Glad he was able to string something together with his life, for sure. Wes, maybe no bigger example of it doesn't matter when you get your points, as long as you get your points. And the next guy on the odds board is Jacob Bridgman. And you basically go back to the very beginning of the season. T18, T8, a win, T18, T5, T14. And that's about it for the season. Now, there's a couple of little sprinkles here and there, but I mean, again, the points are banked, and when they're banked, they're banked, and that's what you get here with Jacob Bridgman, who still finds himself inside the top 30, despite the fact of kind of a really rough stretch there of really not competing at all for any sort of anything. I mean, we get a ninth at the BMW. That's the best we've seen out of him in a very, very long time. Most of these are just non-competitive events, for him. But hey, look, young dude, promising dude. Obviously, he can win. We got him to win on tour this year. Maybe someone will take a little bit more of a look at next year after he's got this kind of first season under his belt and all of that. But hey, listen, he's here in the top 30. He's going to get paid.
That win at the Genesis certainly keeps on giving. And that's an impressive win because it's a signature event on a great course against an elite field. But, the putting numbers have still stayed pretty true for this guy. Like, he's been one of the better putters on tour, but you could tell all over the place a little bit with that approach game. I think you mentioned what was his last top 5 at the Players was his last good finish. And then I believe does not have a top 20 since had one top 20 since until last week. So he's another one of those guys, that peaked very, very early in the year, kind of like a Jake Knapp, who did not make the top 30, of course, due to injury and missing events. But some of those guys, it happens. Some of those guys are real fast starters on the West Coast, and then you get into the meat of the season, and then they kind of regress a little bit, just like it's the opposite way around. They don't start well on the West Coast, and then all of a sudden they play well once you get eastward, like Matt Fitzpatrick did.
Yeah, sweet putter. I never bet Jacob Bridgman, and I'm certainly never, but not betting Jacob Bridgman at this golf course. So this is an easy skip for me. He's one of those guys I just shake my head at whenever I see on the leaderboard. I'm like, I don't know how he gets it done, but he gets it done, and the putter's usually what's doing it for him.
The next three guys, and I'm going to lump them all three together here because I think it's very interesting that where they fall on the odds board, and yet kind of where they've been throughout the course of the season, what they were able to do, and then certainly how often not only us, but it seems like they are getting bet across the industry. The next three guys here on the odds board, Kelley, are Tom Kim, Gary Woodland, and JJ Spawn. And I mean, these are dudes that you can find Tom Kim as long as 50-1 out there in the market right now. Woodland, who was around and lurking this past week, as long as 48-1. And then JJ Spawn, who came out with a nice round to start, obviously faded, but also out there at 48-1. I understand it's only a 30-person field, so it seems like they're way towards the bottom of the odds board. But again, these are dudes that have gotten bet a lot this year, not only by us, but by other people, and certainly dudes that have been lingering around, if not winning tournaments this year.
Yeah, I think this year has been a great example for me when it comes to JJ Spawn, that he is a very, very tough guy for me to handicap and to bet well. I know you got thrown by him a time or two as well, Matt, this year, but it's just, he's one of those guys that at least this season, because I don't necessarily remember it being this big of an issue in past seasons, one of those guys that was rating out too highly, and I probably had overrated basically on a weekly basis, was JJ Spawn. Not really, I don't think he's playing the best right now anyways, has lost on approach the last 2 weeks. Not someone I'm really interested in. Gary Woodland. Look, after the past couple weeks, you want to make an argument for Woodland at this golf course with that driver? Yeah, okay. I could see him making a top 10 run or something just like he did last week and being in the mix. Tom Kim. Look, we've bet him and we've bet him recently. He's been the best, most consistent of these three guys for the past, 6 weeks, probably 8 weeks, something like that. Going back to his win at the Scottish Open, he was tempting this week. I will tell you, he was tempting. It's just at that long a number in a 30-person field, I did stare at a 50-1 on Tom Kim for a long time. I ended up passing on it, but he was someone I considered pretty heavily this week.
Yeah, Wes, you look at these guys and it's like, again, if we do think that length it could be in play this week, then that certainly brings Gary Woodland into play. We've seen some elite level play out of him certainly this season. Now again, guys, like I said, I've got the cheat sheet in front of me. None of us ended up on anybody this long in all of this, but I guess if you get way down here as to guys that maybe not that would win this thing, but if you looked up and maybe they were a, outright fourth or something, or so, whatever, something like that. I think I could at least understand with Woodland.
Yeah, I can as well. And obviously kind of really fit the tee last week, being a long hitter, and was certainly right there in the mix for the win. Fell off a little bit and then made a rally late to get a good finish, but certainly capable and has been such a great story. Obviously what he has dealt with from a health standpoint, and to get that win and basically run away and hide from Nikolai Højgaard and the rest of them at Houston and get back in the winner's circle. So Gary Woodland, I think he is one of those guys that probably is happy to be here. Certainly going to try to win it, but from where he's come, it's like I'm happy to be playing good golf again and with the elite, because people kind of forget that he's a former major champion, won that U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. And speaking of a former major champion, that being JJ Spawn. JJ Spawn is a guy to me that is the quintessence of, he is a very, very good player, but not like an elite player.
Yeah.
But he's always kind of capable because those approach numbers are always so good. So he's never a guy you want to totally ignore, but just is never going to get there as much as you think he is. Tom Kim, meanwhile, who's kind of had a renaissance after the last couple years of it, especially last year was a disaster for him. Tom Kim modeled out very strongly for me. And if I do play placement markets, which is hard to do when you only have 30 players, he's not a guy there I got on my outright, but he's somebody I think should play well here. Just the one appearance, I think 3 years ago where he was 17th, but you would think that this fits him because he's a guy that obviously hits very good approach shots. He's a guy that I think from a driving standpoint, not very long, but he's always up there in like good drives gained, near the top and is a really solid ball striker. And I think, some motivation certainly because he's finally playing well again after he seemingly fell off the face of the planet, because I think we thought, hey, this dude's a star, going forward, and he's going to be a consistent winner like every single year. Like he's going to be like he'll be on the international team, by the way, for the President's Cup, but he's going to be one of those guys like Hideki that kind of is a relatively consistent winner, every year wins somewhere big on the PGA Tour, whether it's a major like a signature or just a regular event. And now maybe he's starting to finally realize that. So he did actually model pretty well for me this week.
Yeah, the next guy on the list here at Justin Rose, and Justin Rose, an interesting deal. I mean, 46 years old, guys, and it starts to make me wonder, comes out and wins the Farmers. That's way back in February, right? And then you see he has the good finish at the Masters where it's T3, but there was a whole month that he took off, and then he has a good finish there, then right back on the horse, and then it was just kind of like all downhill from there for him. I'm not saying that he's washed. I'm just saying that once you get to 46 and you're going up against these guys that are absolutely superhuman now at this point, I wonder if the course of a full golf season is just going to be really, really tough. But hey, got the win, got the T3 over there at the Masters, a couple of other, top 20 finishes, never really contending for anything, never really was in the mix to win anything outside of that. But some decent finishes that gets him here into the top 30. My model absolutely hated him. I mean, I'm talking as low as like 26th out of 30 in a couple of different models. Like my model absolutely hated Justin Rose this week.
Yeah, I'm looking at last 16 rounds, so he's a little bit higher for me. He's actually had pretty good approach weeks the last 3 weeks, at least, that he's played. I think the point you brought up to begin with, though, Matt, is what would remove my interest from him immediately. He's been pretty open about it, too, about kind of managing his play and how much he's playing. And he travels around with the bus and everything, right? And all the work he's getting off the course done on it. I think Justin Rose is very set on how much he wants to play at this point in his career, so it makes it a little interesting when you've got to go 3 weeks in a row in a playoff scenario like this, right? So I think if he was perfectly setting up his schedule, he wouldn't ideally do this. Now, he did do it at times early in the season because he's playing all these signature events and majors and stuff, but that's really how he's designing his schedule these days. So I think the age concerns with just matching up with hot Atlanta and having to battle through this long course with Rose, no interest for me, but I think good points on him.
I feel like Justin Rose has one more moment of greatness in his career, even though he's 46. Like, he's going to win one more big one. Like, we've seen it at the Masters where he's been twice a runner-up in the last several years. Like, he's going to get one more big event before it's all said and done. And the fact that he's 46 and still plays relatively solid, I think is a feather in his cap, because most guys have tapered off. But he still has those one moment a year where it's like, that's the vintage Justin Rose. Has been runner-up here at East Lake a couple times, but that was like well over a decade ago. Remember, he won the FedEx Cup. I think, what was this? It was back in 2018 where he won the FedEx Cup, but the story was Tiger making his triumphant return in East Lake and winning the event. And there's like, oh, by the way, this guy won the FedEx Cup in $10 million, and that was a side note. And that's why they went to that starting strokes deal that I think none of us really liked, but not for me this week. He's going to have, I think, one more big win of like a major, something like a Players or something like that. But this guy, I think when he turns 50 and gets out to the Champions Tour, if he wants to play regularly, he'll dominate.
Yeah.
A guy that somehow, for me, and we talked about there's a handful of people in this tournament that did not win on tour this year. One of those is Bob McIntyre, who did not win on tour this year. Certainly was in the mix in a few different ones, was not able to get across the finish line. And another one of those guys that, so I think for me, it's like, awesome DFS play, because it's like he either pops or he doesn't, right? Like I love the fact that like his volatility is so high. As if you're watching along with us on YouTube, Kelly's got it right now. You can see, I mean, like, we're
honestly,
talking
Matt, if you're listening to the
T15.
podcast right now, just go watch this one at home. Like, I'm running through so many stats and everything. I actually think it matches up pretty well with what we're talking about right now. And yeah, you are right, Matt. You landed on Bob McIntyre. I'll let you finish, but just if you're watching at home, the season of back and forth with the driver to putter to what's working and what's not is incredible.
Yeah, it's for me like a dude that you'd love to play in a big tournament DFS type deal, because it's like you've got to navigate through 100,000 teams. And so, hey, when he pops, yeah, he pops. We got an outright fourth. We got a T2. We got a T3. We got a T7 over the course of the season. We also have several cuts and T60s and stuff like that along the way as well. So you kind of want one of those highly volatile dudes when you're playing those type of deals. But for me, at this type of price, I'll play Bob when Bob's 70 and stuff in other tournaments, 75, 80, stuff like that. But now that we're in this small field and you're only getting about 45 on Bob, that's a pretty easy pass for me, Wes.
Yeah, this was a guy, I think, along the lines we mentioned with Min Woo, maybe that was this going to be his breakthrough season to win a major? Because we certainly thought it at the end of 2025, where he's second at Oakmont. Of course, J.J. Spawn makes that lone putt and puts it away to win the U.S. Open. T7 at the Open Championship, but in the majors this year, missed the first two cuts, T39 at the U.S. Open, T28 at the Open Championship. So, the wins haven't come necessarily right away for Robert McIntyre after he won two years ago. He did win the Dunhill Links last fall, and that's probably what he'll do again. He'll be another guy that, now that the Europeans, by the way, because it's not a Ryder Cup year, you will see a lot of these Europeans play in the fall schedule, which is kind of backloaded on the DP World Tour. So you'll see a lot of these big names play these events, and then he'll win, and it's like, oh yeah, Robert McIntyre. And then the optimism will reign, I think, for another season.
One more quick Bobby Mack note. This is the add another name to our injury report, right? Because he had the WD a couple weeks ago, dealing with a cyst on his knee that goes all the way back to Scotland. So that's another one. Who the hell knew about that? And then he WDs at the St. Jude.
There's only 30 players in the field, and so obviously it is much easier to make it to the top than it would be in a normal field. But Adam Scott next on the board here, as the shortest is 40, the longest is 50 out there in the market right now on Adam Scott. And I have been as guilty as anyone of playing Adam Scott. Certainly if you're, again, a DFS type thing, if you're looking for a dude that can put up a good performance at a reduced salary in DFS, that's one thing. But getting across the finish line is another, who has not won on tour since 2020, February of 2020 for Adam Scott. So the win equity for him is absolutely zero. Another 46-year-old here that you kind of take a look at and you realize maybe his very best days are behind him, can still compete. We see top 20 finishes and all of that, but that's about it here from Adam Scott. So for me, that's a thing that I'm going to work into, I think, for my betting next year. By the way, hat tip to Gary Woodland, who at the 72-1 keeps my betting season not from being a complete disaster this year, but is honestly just really honing in on these guys that look, they're playing fine, but are they really going to get across the finish line? Are they really going to win a tournament? And I bet Adam Scott, I think maybe 3 times this year or something for outrights. That was just dumb. I should have bet top 20s. That's probably his ceiling at this point in his career. And so with that, I've just got to kind of readjust my brain with all that. But Kelley, again, solid finishes here and there and all that. I don't think we ever talked about him actually winning a tournament, competing to win a tournament or any other stuff like that. So I think it's just, you just have to know what you're dealing with when you get in some of these guys. And I think he falls in that bucket.
Yeah, totally. I think along the lines of, Rose, Woodland, we've been talking about, maybe even better comp to Rose. Just, hey, it's someone who's getting up there in age. It's kind of doing everything he can to still contend with these guys, and has been, right? The ball speed numbers and stuff like that are impressive for where he's at with the rest of the PGA Tour. And look, we're going to probably say this a lot on this podcast. There's only 30 guys, right? If you're watching home, 3 straight weeks of solid off the tee gains. It's been a little sporadic everywhere else, but if you're getting solid driver play from Adam Scott, he's a good approach player, usually is. He could easily be one of those guys that we see finish 4th or whatever this week, and you're like, oh, okay, sure.
Adam Scott is kind of in the same vein as Justin Rose, but he's a little bit more consistent. They, of course, have the one major championship. Adam Scott, former Masters champion. But he's a little more consistent than Rose. He doesn't have the valleys that Rose has, and the fact that he's more consistent. He still doesn't miss a lot of cuts. I think he's missed 8 cuts out of 60-some events in the last 3 years. So he's that consistency. So you always kind of think he's got one more moment in him, but you're just wondering when it's going to come. And if you keep betting him all the time, you're just not going to get rewarded. And then inevitably the moment is going to come where maybe he wins an Open Championship late in his 40s, which certainly could happen. And he's always been good at that particular major. but you're just not going to be on him. And you're going to be like, man, I bet this guy all this time. And then he finally, breaks through. And you knew he had that moment of greatness because the swing still looks good. He's obviously in great physical shape and condition and has been a model of consistency. But you just never know when that moment is coming. So it's really hard to dump money into him.
And him and Woodland also another thing, and it's because everybody on tour has gotten just so ridiculous. You're just like, we have now become conditioned that guys are just going to get up and down like every time. Like it's just like they're off the green or they're in a bunker, and you're just like, you just assume that these guys are getting up and down. Like his short game is horrific. Like, and so is Gary Woodland. Like their short game is awful. And it's like, that's where you leak strokes and that's where you leak oil. And that's how you don't get across. That's where you're actually contending and you're more like T9 or you're T12 because you're giving up these bogeys that these other guys are just not giving up because their short games have gotten just absurdly good. That is not the case with a guy like Woodland and a guy like Adam Scott, who just literally leak oil when they get around the green and stuff like that. So,
I will say, Matt, I did actually have one pro Adam Scott bet I did consider. It sounds like I'm a little bit higher on him this week than you guys, but he was still very middle of the pack. I'm not really going to bat with him. But the top Australasia, is that what we call it, Wes? Am I screwing this up?
Yeah,
the top Australasia market. That would be him. He's like plus 110 you're going to find there. Then it's against Ryan Fox and Minwoo Lee. So three guys we've already discussed. Yeah. I kind of liked Adam Scott at a plus price there. That was almost a bet for me.
Well, he's definitely more consistent, right? I mean, like you're betting on consistency there, and certainly I think that's, and he gets all 4 rounds to be consistent too, right? So that's the other thing. So I don't mind that. I don't mind that one at all. Next on the odds board here, Wes, is a guy that we've all bet. I think to at least a decent amount of success, at least from a placement market standpoint and all that. Weirdly, my model hated him this week, and I didn't really expect that. But Ryan Gerard, also 40 there at MGM. You can find him if you're Caesars has him out at 50-1 here in this one. Like I said, I was not expecting my model to hate him as much as he did, but the average of the 3 models for Gerard was 27th out of 30 players, which I was pretty shocked about.
Yeah, same with me here, and the fact that he's got 4 top 10s in like the last basically 12 to 13 weeks. So it's not like he's played poorly. A couple missed cuts in there, but Gerard is a guy who has won on the PGA Tour. He won, I think it was the Barracuda a couple years ago, and he's been so close. He's been so close to like winning that breakthrough event, whether it's a signature or a major. Remember, he ended up 9th at the Open, but he was right there. Like he was a threat to win at one point on Sunday, and then lost the playoff to JT Poston at the Memorial back in late May. So you feel like he's close. It wouldn't be a surprise if he ends up on the first page of the leaderboard at the conclusion of Sunday, but this is a guy, maybe he'll play. Now, none of these guys have to play these fall series events, by the way, because they're already qualified. So maybe he takes the rest of the year off, but he's going to win at some point. But it feels like either a fall series event or like early next year at one of those events, like the American Express, or they don't have Hawaii anymore. So that would have been a candidate. Or Phoenix. Like he'll win one of those early events, I think, in 2027, where he finally breaks through if he keeps this consistency up that he's had basically for like the last year and a half.
Yeah, Kelley, if you look, it seems like there's some obvious work here to be done in the offseason for him, and I'm sure he will, but it's like guy was just an iron wizard for the longest time. It's why we loved playing him. And then you can see in 5 of the last 8, he's lost. 2 of the 3 that he didn't lose, he was basically just even to the field and only gained on 1 of his last 8 tournaments. So really, since June, his irons have just fallen off of a cliff. And so obviously some work to do in the offseason here to try to figure that out.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. This was, you said it almost perfectly, Matt. He was someone I actually thought would rate out higher because he has been fairly consistently throughout the season. And yeah, someone we've all bet. Look, the off the tee game's been strong and consistent, so that's good. But especially for things that I ran, I didn't look anything further out than last 20 rounds. I mean, he's last 16 round models. What I got pulled up right now, he's 20th in it, and it is. I mean, you're staring at it on the screen. It's because of 2 straight weeks in a row where he's lost on approach.
And I don't think he's going to be taken for the President's Cup. But with the captain's pick from Brandt Snedeker, maybe that's going to be a motivator. because like he's probably just on the outside looking in here, but you just don't know, okay, is he ready for this international competition when you got all these young guys that you could choose from, like Jackson Koiven, Michael Chorbjornsson, of course not in the field this week, but have won in the last month or so. So that'll be interesting. Maybe that'll be an extra motivator because these guys all want to make those teams.
Well, boys, we finally make it to somebody on the odds board that is on our cards, and I can't believe it's me and not y'all. But I bet Hideki Matsuyama.
Oh, God.
He is 31-1 at Circa. So if you're in a Circa market, you can get that. But honestly, if you're in a FanDuel market, he's 30-1. So I mean, you can get a 30-1 out there on Hideki. And honestly, the more I dug into this, and I talked about how I wanted some guy off the tee. We hated Hideki because he couldn't hit the damn ball straight.
Yeah.
And then over the last 2 months, all he's done is gain off the tee, and the approach numbers are still there. Again, Hideki's never going to win, never going to win a putting contest. But like, hey, listen, can he run hot? We've seen just 2 tournaments ago where he gained 4.7. Then you go 2 tournaments behind that, and you gain 3.4, and he gained 2.2. So can I just sniff out a hot putter week out of Hideki if he keeps driving it like this and the approach game is still there? I just need him to run hot with the flat stick, and I thought the number attached to him, considering the win equity I think he brings if he does get a hot putter in a 30-man tournament, was just a little bit too much for me. So we finally get to somebody that did make our card. Hideki Matsuyama for me at, again, if you're in a FanDuel market, which you know is all over the country, still at 30-1 out there at FanDuel.
This one pains me. This is, if you guys were maybe keeping track, I did bet him last week. So that brought it to 6 weeks in a row, Matt Brown, that I bet the man. 6 weeks in a row, and I've decided to stop now. So I have thought about this ever since I finalized my card that surely Hideki Matsuyama will win. So Matt Brown going to pick up an outright. Good on you. Yeah, look, the driving accuracy has been incredible. You nailed it. And the approach game's back. He's hitting his irons all from all ranges very, very well here over the past couple months. Yes, 2 weeks where he's lost strokes putting, but I mean, honestly, if you just look back past couple months, that's pretty decent putting for Hideki Matsuyama. That's what we are concerned about with him the most. I'll tell you what brought me off him, Matt. It was a couple weeks of bad putting in a row that kind of got to me, and then it's just the history here. It is not good for how many times he has played here. The finishes, just if you're watching at home, he can't gain on this field, on this track with the rest of these guys that are usually playing against him. It's so hard for Hideki to gain off the tee, and it's the approach game's got to be perfect. And he's got to gain with the putter. So I stayed off him this week, but man, I bet him 6 weeks in a row. He's been awesome. I hear you.
I will say this though. So since the renovation, he gained minimally, basically even to the field, and then barely down, right? So, I mean, when it got easier to drive here and it got easier off the tee, he has not been as poor off the tee here. And so that was another thing that did stand out to me with him. But at the end of the day, Wes, I think with Hideki, we say this every single time, and I don't think it's a lazy handicap. Honestly, if the putter shows up, his ass is going to be on the front page. He's going to be like, and he will be around. But like, if he loses, he on any given tournament can go lose 4.5 strokes putting, and he's dead. So it just it is what it is. Like we said, we like to know what we're getting into. Yeah. I know what I'm getting into with Hideki, right? Like I know what I'm getting into.
Well, and real quick, Wes, give me 1 sec here. Because one last thing I want to say about Hideki is I do think this is one of those courses we didn't spend as much time going through statistically what we're looking for each week. Like, or for this week, but distance off the tee is important. But when we don't have that distance off the tee, and Hideki's not necessarily a guy that does, what we usually talk about on longer tracks is something that he definitely checks the boxes for, where he is good with all ranges of his irons, right? Elite. We're talking elite with the long irons if you're looking at 200-plus yardage out there. Elite with the wedge play, right? He's got it all covered. So there's very few guys, even in a field like this, that you can kind of say that about and be confident that even if he's not too long off the tee, still he's got every shot to make it onto the green.
Good around the green here as well. Maybe not so much with the putter, putter, but always good with his chipping and always one of the tour leaders in terms of gaining around the green. Got a couple top fives here, but he has made 11 appearances, so he has a lot of experience at least playing this course. Certainly, I think in a lot of the around the green stuff and a couple of the long irons, especially I think if you're looking at that proximity 200 plus this week, because you're going to have a few of those shots on this course, certainly measured out as he did an approach. Did not make the card this week, but certainly not somebody that it's like, oh my God, I'd be shocked if he won.
The next guy up on the odds board also makes one of our cards as Russell Henley gets a spot over there on Wes Reynolds' card.
Yeah, I did play him in the without market about 23.50 in the 30ish to 1 in the with. Co-runner up here of Cantlay last year. Plus he was third here in 2017, fourth in 2024. He's actually never finished worse than 12th for his entire career here at East Lake. Only T12 last week, but if you looked at that final round, boy, that final round, I want to say it was an aberration, because when do you ever see one of these two things? When do you see Russell Henley lose 5 strokes almost via ball striking and only hit 5 of 14 fairways? Because that's what he did on Sunday. He leads the tour in driving accuracy, always up there near the top in good drives gained. So I'm going to say it was an aberration and go with the guy that has some pretty good history here. And, you know, it sounds ridiculous and absurd to say buy low in a 30-player field where everybody is certainly a capable player, and this is a hell of an accomplishment just to get here to Atlanta. But I think he kind of fits the bill this week at a place where he historically plays well. I know this seems like a longer course, and he's not a longer hitter, but I don't think that's going to matter when you're a good ball striker and your experience. Of course, he's a Georgia Bulldog, so you know a lot of family will probably be here in Atlanta. I'm sure he would be extra motivated even to win this. Put aside the price tag that's obviously attached for winning this event. So Russell Henley, I'm gonna buy off bad news in terms of that round 4 where he shot even par, had to gain about 4 strokes putting to do it, but now he's on Bermuda too, where I think that's where he putts the best historically is on the Bermuda grass. So I'm willing to give Russell Henley a shot here.
Kelley, what'd you think of Henley this week?
Yeah, I think Wes has got it all covered, man. This is look, the guy's been great with the off the tee. He's been extremely accurate. It's what we expect of him. I mean, the putter's been what's carrying him, though, right? If he can get the driver and approach game to just click in, yeah, he's got a chance. I actually feel like over the past few years, I've been the Russell Henley guy. I think Wes has taken that over here over the past few months. He was not someone who was really rated out extremely highly for me, and I understand your buy low sense, though, Wes. I think that checks out. I do think there are a couple guys. Like, I was just looking at the Hideki odds that I've bet into the past few weeks. I mean, Matt's getting the same number that I bet on him 3 weeks ago in a much larger field. So,
right.
Yeah, I think there are some guys you could hit buy low on. I think Edley checks that. Great history here, so it's really hard to argue that.
The next guy on the odds board, we've all fallen victim to the Woo. The Woo is 25 to 1 out there. You can find 25 at MGM, at FanDuel. You can find it at 365 as well. So don't settle for the Woo at Caesars or at DraftKings, where you're getting a worse number there on the Woo. I mean, listen, the story is the same with Siwoo. He's going to model amazing for everyone. He does so many things well. Why in the hell he cannot close things out is absolutely crazy. We continue to talk about this, time and time again when we talk about win equity and things like that with these certain players. And, you look, and this is a guy that's not won on tour since January of 2023. I mean, we are coming on 3.5 years of a guy that can't get across the finish line, despite the fact that his profile is one of the best in the game. And so, Wes, I don't know how to handicap it, honestly. It's one of those things where I'm going to try to figure out if I need to do better with all of this. But I mean, maybe there's just something in some of these guys that they can get across the finish line and some of them just can't, right? And it's like, it's not that they play bad. It's just, they just don't go get it necessarily when they have the chance to go get it. And I don't know if Siwoo was one of those guys, or at least 2 different times this year where we thought he was going to finally get it done and he couldn't get it done. And so, yet again, 25 to 1, great profile. I'm sure he modeled great for everybody out there. If you want to play him in a top 10 or a top 5 or in a head-to-head or anything like that, I'm never going to talk you off of that with him because the consistency is typically there. But the win equity, like we said, has not won since January of 2023 on tour.
The main reason I think maybe some will look to Siwoo this week is potentially the quote-unquote do factor, which can be really dangerous. But you look at the fact that he's got 9 top 20s, or 9 top 10s, I should say, in the last 20 weeks. Only a couple appearances here. Did have a top 10 several years ago. But, yeah, the consistency, this has probably been maybe his best season on the PGA Tour, despite the fact that he doesn't have a win. You look at, all of these top 10s and including top 5s, third at the Heritage, fourth at the Cadillac, second at the Byron Nelson, sixth at the Open, probably his best look ever. I think that was his best major championship finish ever. And then, of course, got home for the winner without Scottie with us 2 weeks ago in Memphis with the second. So I think I got my ROI on the Woo, and I'm going to leave him off this week.
I mean, Kelley, he's fifth in the points without a win. If that tells you how he played this year, right? I mean, he's been awesome. Ahead of Goddard and Burns and Fleetwood and Ludvig and all of that. But it's just, Again, great placement market guy, and I think we've all made money off the Woo this year, betting him in placement markets and stuff. I think I've just pissed some of that away, at least a little bit, with some outrights that maybe I should have tucked back in. But I mean, as we said, 11 top 10s over the course of the season.
Hey, great season. We love Siwoo. We've been betting him for years. And I think look, he's been on our concern radar, if you will, for win equity. And can this guy really win for multiple years now? So it's usually just placement bets for me on Siwoo. So I think betting on Siwoo continues to be pretty good. And I look for him to keep it up, man. I continue this into next season. He's become a very, very consistent golfer, and we know where his struggles are, and that's on the green with the putter. You expect him to be accurate off the tee. You expect him to be a top one of the best approach players on the planet. It's kind of what he's turned into. It's just, he's not very long off the tee, and the putter comes and goes, and that can be tricky sometimes. So yeah, he was a pass for me this week, but like you said, Matt, he is the second highest rated golfer of mine that we have talked about so far, Hideki being the only one who is higher than him.
Wes, we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you guys are regular listeners, we won't go super in depth here on Viktor Hovland. I mean, you can only bet Victor in an outright market because he's either going to show up or he's not. He is definitely never a guy. He's the anti-Siwoo. Like, you do not want to be betting him like in head-to-heads and placement markets and things like that or whatever, because he's either there or he's not. Kelley's got it up for those of you watching. A win, a T13, then a cut, then a T19 and a T33. I mean, that's just what you get out of Victor. And that's just, again, what you're getting into. It is what it is. Kelley, I don't know if I don't know if I bet Victor outright in a couple of years, and obviously I've missed out on the win. I missed out on the Travelers win or something like that. I don't know if I can get there with him, because it's just, to me, so random at the odds that you're getting. It's not like some of these guys we're talking about that you get the 70 every now and then, like a Bobby Mack or a 8, whatever. It's like his odds are so depressed, for a lot of different times, with the win equity just being so random.
Yeah, just double checking myself. Not a single outright bet on Viktor Hovland for the entire season.
I've had a couple this year, because I'm always a sucker for the talent. But the fact that he's a constant tinkerer, as I've mentioned on this podcast over and over again. He constantly messes with the swing. He constantly, changes swing coaches. Does have a win here, by the way. Remember, won here in 2023. Then they've, of course, made a lot of changes to the course, but did win the FedEx Cup, and then was the tying low scorer with Xander Schauffele to go ahead and win that market as well. So he's certainly capable, but Viktor Hovland is a timing player. It's just, you got to try to figure out how to time him right, and that's what makes him really difficult for me.
Yeah, really good course history here. I mean, for guys that we're looking for strong off the tee and on approach, you would think he makes a lot of sense. He was relatively easy for me to skip by, though, this week.
Kelley, I think one of the more interesting guys on the board for me this week, considering we are in a 30-person field, the next guy on the odds board is Matt Fitzpatrick. Multiple wins this year. Yeah. A guy that everybody was betting left and right for the longest time. I understand the results have been a little bit trickling after he gets a couple wins. There's a T52 and a T14 and a T36. But then there's an outright second at the RBC. There's an outright 4 at the Travelers. The last 3 weeks certainly hasn't been the greatest for him with the cut in the 12th and the 28th and the limited field events and stuff like that. But interesting that we're having, let me do the official count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 golfers with shorter odds than the guy that's won multiple times this year.
Yeah, what, 3 times, right? Yeah, 3 times if we include the Zurich. Yeah, that is pretty impressive. But man, if you're watching at home, right, this is what we all stare at every single week, and you see where he was playing so well in April and May, and it is just green everywhere, right? He was accurate off the tee. The approach game was, a top 3 on the planet for about 2 months probably. Around the green, he was cleaning up everything. He's gaining with the putter every other week. He was so locked in then. I don't want to say this because I was betting Fitzpatrick a lot. That might be the best we ever see Matt Fitzpatrick play. And it might be, I think he can reach those heights again, but to expect that from him for months and months at a time, I think is lofty expectations. So past few weeks have not been great. They've not been terrible either. I think this is a guy that absolutely could go out there and win it, but we're always looking at guys heading in with good reason for him. Just doesn't have it this week.
Yeah, Wes, when we look at Fitzpatrick, I mean, a guy that I think early candidate for player of the year, right? And then he just the mixed bag here. And I know we all recency bias just creeps in our minds so much, but boy, he's closing out here on a whimper. I hope maybe he shows up here in this one and maybe proves us all wrong. But the cut, the 12th, the 28th in the limited field events and stuff, it's just man, it's hard to buy into when you got the 30 best players in the world.
From a pure model standpoint, and I'm taking longer time frame of data, he's a top 5 in this player for me, and I didn't even really feel need to consider him necessarily, even though he's certainly capable, because I think some guys, and every player is different, right? Some guys just kind of burn out a little bit at the end of the season. And boy, doesn't it seem like he is. And I think he's been pretty open and vocal about it. He doesn't really love the playoffs. And I don't think he's ever really been great in this time of year. It's much better, I think, when you're in the meat of the season, like we were earlier this year. The stats, it's I'm looking at it and it's why am I not playing this guy? Yeah. And then I'm just going with the fact that, boy, he doesn't look like the same player. And sometimes a guy in a long season, because keep in mind, this is condensed, even though it seems like it's January to August, it's not that long, but you got so many majors and so many signature events and so much condensed. He seems like a guy that's about ready to go back to England and go back to Europe and maybe, play the Dunhill Links and win that again with his mom as his amateur partner. And, his brother got his card and all that. So, I don't want to say he's not quit. That's a wrong word, but maybe resigned to, hey, I've had a pretty good season, and I'm just ready to go home.
Just a couple, just an interesting, at least to me, and worth pointing out. Pulled up Fitzpatrick and Siwoo. I mean, 2 quality approach players. This is where golf stats can get tricky, right? When you just look at a 30-person tour championship field and you're going back through the past couple years. Just interesting. Both these guys have only played this course a couple times and have lost on approach. Both of them in both times they've teed it up. So it's something worth noting. But keep in mind how this works. 30-man field. It's going to be skewed very heavily.
I was on Chris Goddard last week, was not able to go get it. You can find him 22-1 out there in the market this week. Did cross the finish line twice on the season. Just could not, the irons were not cooperating in rounds 3 and 4 for him this past week and ended up with a T4 there at the BMW. Comes in, always one of the leaders off the tee, is going to stripe it well. The approach game typically has been well, though 2 of the last 3 weeks, the irons have been a little bit off. Around the green game, always been an issue with him. And then we see 3 out of the last 4, the putter, be a little bit of an issue for him as well. Kelley, I think you probably bet Goddard up more than anybody over the course of this season. What do you think about as he heads in here in the 30-person field?
Yeah, got very close again this week. I was on him last week as well. I didn't know you were, Matt. I really thought we had a chance to steal it. Getting another Goddard up one, oh man, I really thought we did. He was looking good last week. I entered this week thinking I was going to play Goddard up again. I think this is a course that should set up very well for him. the one thing, and look, he did finish T10 here last year, gained off the tee, gained on approach. That is going to be his massive weapon, right? The driver versus everybody else in this field. When we talk about these guys that are this good, having that bit of a separation point from everybody else I think does factor in a lot. I think that's why Rory's done so well at this golf course and in this event in the past. You know what brought me off Goddard this week? Lost on approach last week. What really stuck out to me this week when I was looking into some of his driving stats, the distance is there. We talk about this 3.5-inch Bermuda rough. The accuracy has not been there as much recently. So strokes gained off the tee can be a little misleading here because you see all that green for, 8 events in a row, but he's spraying it a bit. So I think that if he's going to do that this week, then that takes away the advantage that he has with that driver on the tee box every time. Now, we see this guy, he seemingly hits better approach shots out of thicker rough than like anybody I ever watch. Like we saw it multiple times just last week, right? It's like missed fairway and then he hits some ridiculous shot onto the, 5 feet away. So maybe he could keep doing that, but playing against the best in the world at this golf course, he was a very, very heavy consideration for me. I kind of last leaf off. When we get to who I bet, I pivoted off of Goddard, but those accuracy numbers did concern me a bit.
So last 24 rounds, Wes, to Kelly's point here, Goddard is 25th out of 30 players in good drive percentage in this field. And like, it's just, again, if he's hitting it in the fairway, he is dangerous as hell because he's hitting it 320 yards. And then if the irons are good, whatever. But, ultimately, kind of like you, Kelley, I saw that, and it was kind of the big red flag here. There is water in play as well on 8 of the holes, and then the fact that they did grow this rough up at least a half an inch, and maybe a full inch by the time it rains on Thursday and whatever, and all the stuff like that. Like, I don't want a dude playing out of that stuff too much, and it seems like he's doing that too often here.
Kelley kind of hit on it at the end there, too, when he mentioned against an elite field. And that, if there is kind of one criticism of Chris Goddard, who won 3 times this year and is certainly a Player of the Year candidate, he hasn't gotten it done against the top fields. I think last week at the BMW, that T4, that was only his second top 10 in a signature event / major championship. He was top 10 in a Ronnemink at the PGA because remember he was third at the Open last July, and you thought, okay. Now, he's going to start to win, and he has won regularly. Won the 3 times, of course, the John Deere, Phoenix, and also the Sony at Hawaii. But he hasn't done it against the top fields. I think for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, Matt, in terms of the good drives gained and just a little bit too much of a sprayer off the tee. Now, I think he's certainly going to be one of Brandt Snedeker's captain's picks for the President's Cup. He absolutely should be. I think there's something wrong. And plus, I think that you need to get younger, newer players in the pipeline, too. Every single cycle, at least 1 or 2. And Goddard certainly would be one of those guys. But I need to see a little bit more evidence for Chris Goddard. If I'm betting him at one of these like real big boy events, I need to see a little bit more consistency out of him.
Another one of the guys that did not win this year, and we can set this up because he's only won once, and it was this event last year, and it was Tommy Fleetwood. He is 20-1 out there in the odds market. Y'all know me. I don't bet Tommy Fleetwood. I hate guys that can't win. By the way, his best finish was a T4 over the course of the entire season. Now, a lot of top 20s and stuff. He is the ever
machine.
Lurker, Kelley, but like he didn't really press to win anything this year. And I don't know if that just changes here in this one either. Again, I didn't expect him to win last year, and he did. And so certainly it wouldn't be out of the question to see him get across the finish line, but it took him forever to do it. Didn't do it again this year over the course of the entire season, and actually never really contended. Like I said, I mean, best finish was a T4 this year.
Yeah, really bad stats last week. So that's definitely pulling him down in my model this week. T7 at St. Jude, T4 at the Open. Like you said, his best finish this year. A lot of quality finishes, good golf from Tommy Fleetwood this year. But yeah, I think it's a last 16 round model I've got in front of me. He is my 23rd rated golfer this week. So no interest in Tommy Fleetwood. There's not many shops posting posting matchups, but he might actually be someone.
That's the deal. I wish we could do that. It's like they post them so late now, like the head to head. So, but when we're doing the pod, they're very rarely up, or only a couple are up. Now, this would be a different conversation, Wes, if we could say, now that being said, Tommy versus blah, right. Then we'd be like, yeah, I like Tommy a lot in this, and maybe that's a better way to go about it if you want a piece of him, but we just don't have access to those yet, and so that's just a little unfortunate about the timing of when we do the pod.
He was certainly he was actually a consider for me, despite everything that you said, but he's not going to be on. He was on it last year when we got the win, and he finally got his first triumph on American soil, and he hasn't played poorly. But the numbers aren't as good. Like, if you look last year, he's top 20 in putting. He's 73rd this year. He was 6th on approach last year. He's 44th this year. So he hasn't played poorly. But, Matt, you I think, laid it out very well there. He has not really been that close. Even though you look at all these top 10s and top 5s, they felt like lurking top 5s and top 10s. They have not felt like he's really been in the mix.
It's like he's got a final round 65 to get into the top 4 or so, whatever. It wasn't like he was actually
there. It keeps suckers like me believing.
Yeah,
it keeps suckers like me believing and thinking, okay, this is where he turns it around. But, maybe I got my pound of flesh here last year at East Lake with Tommy Ladd finally getting through. Not for me this week, even though he was a consider, because you look at his finishes at East Lake and obviously the win last year, but has had a pretty consistent group of finishes here. And you would think the course would fit a guy that's very good in total driving. I think he's never finished worse than 16th here, but he's a leave alone, maybe a matchup play against somebody, but nothing for me on an outright.
I was just laughing.
Maybe a matchup. What was that, Kelley?
I was just laughing because I was like, I know Circa has matchups up. Let me see who they posted him against. Scottie Scheffler. They used him as the Scottie Scheffler out to late minus 300 on Scheffler.
I was going to say, or he's at least like a 250 dog. Yes.
So next on the odds board, same odds as Tommy Fleetwood, 20 across the board basically is Cam Young. And this is my handicap here is basically, I think something's wrong with him. And so I'm just going to I noticed he had a brace on his right wrist that whatever his putting is ass. His approach has been ass the last couple of weeks, coming in leaking oil. So again, all things considered, if I thought he was fine, sure, whatever. But I just think something's wrong. I have no confirmation of this. This is just my personal opinion, but he's leaking oil badly at T61, T39, T37, and just has not looked the same at all over the last month. And so that's just my personal opinion. You guys take it away, but I scratched Cam Young off for me after watching this past week. I'm like, something ain't right with this dude. He ain't right.
I wonder if that near miss at the Open Championship, as ridiculous as it sounds, remember he finished, I think, 2.5 hours ahead of the leader. I think he thought that was going to hold up. And I think a lot of us did, and he's going to win that first major and, really clinch player of the year. I think that would have, had Ryan Fox not made that putt at 18, maybe they go to a playoff and he beats Foxy there. But I feel the same way. I feel like he's a guy that's kind of peaked earlier in the year and, got a lot of his accomplishments. Of course, cashed a couple outrights for me this year, the Players and the Cadillac, but he's not at his peak, despite what he did at the Open Championship where he shot that really low round on Sunday. Something seems off. He was dead last in the field for putting in the final round on Sunday at Belle Reve. So I know that I'm going to see a lot of people play him because it's okay, there's a big boy event. He's done pretty damn well in big boy events this year, but not for me this week.
Yeah, it's Matt. It's either something's wrong, or he's ahead of everybody, Wes, with planning his beach vacation and wherever he's heading here very soon.
He looked uninterested that last week. He didn't look like he was out there to have fun or play golf, whatever. He looked uninterested last week.
I'll tell you, the one, and there are guys like this. I'm looking at last 16 rounds. I don't even know how he's rated out as highly as he has for me, but he's middle of the pack. He's 14th. That's pretty damn good considering we were looking right now how poorly he's done the past few weeks. He's lost with the putter 3 straight events, 2 of them very badly, and he's lost on approach for 2 weeks in a row for the first time all season.
The long grind gets to some of these guys, too, like I was saying with the season. Yeah. And then I still think the disappointment is there because that's the last thing for Cam Young, right? Because he kind of broke through a new frontier this time where he started to win big guy events and not necessarily like the Wyndham Championship, all due respect, but he won the Players and he was in contention in 2 of the 4 majors this year. Probably, and we all had him for the Masters where we thought he was going to win. And then all of a sudden, late on that front nine, I was like, okay, I think his chance is probably gone right now as well as he was driving the ball. So I think that disappointment at the Open still might be registering here a little bit. Mm-hmm. As absurd as that sounds, it's been over a month, but still, guys get over it in different ways, and at different time frames for everybody, and maybe still not over it, and maybe that disappointment is still setting in with him.
Next on the odds board is 18-1. It is the white Siwoo Kim, Sam Burns, a guy that is going to model incredibly well for you and just can't get across the finish line. March of 2023, his last win, despite absolutely ripping our hearts out 2 different times this year where it looked like he was going to go on and win when we had fat tickets on him. Yeah. Guys, could he go win this week? Obviously. Look, the profile, there's a lot of green across the board tournaments there. He has been able to put several tournaments together, but has not been able to get across the finish line. And I didn't go there this week. I don't know if maybe there's something in the back of my brain that's just got me a little salty towards Burns for not getting a couple of those tickets home for me this season. But, at 18-1, if he goes and wins, that's going to be a nice price in a 30-person field for as well as he's played. But didn't get there, Wes. Not for me this week.
Yeah, one of my ladder leave-offs, and he's another one that kind of fits with Siwoo, where it's like the do factor. It's like, man, he's had such a good year. I was close at the U.S. Open. You guys were close at the Open Championship, where it feels like, man, he should have gotten more. Like he deserved more out of his play this year and out of his results. And this, is his last chance essentially to get it here at the Tour Championship. But yeah, didn't make it for me either. Certainly is capable. It's got a couple top 10s. I think he was 7th here last year. So if I miss out, I miss out. I'm not going to bet a FOMO play. I think he might be a FOMO play for a lot of people this week because it's like, well, eventually he's got to break through. And there's a couple other guys we're going to get to here shortly that kind of fit that same mantra. But no, I think you stick with the proven guys that have been able to get across. And Sam just unfortunately has not been able to do that, even though he's on the Bermuda and, he's one of the best putters in the game. So he could certainly have a spike week.
Kelley, I'm going to guess maybe not as high in your model since you do a little bit more recent than we do, and that finish last week probably tainted it. I will say this for me, the average across the models I ran this week, he was second. Literally second. No,
he's going to be. He's going to. So
this is me giving the big middle finger to my model because it's like I should bet him at where he is at.
No, we're on tilt. We're mentally scarred from him. It's for sure. We are if as golf bettors, if we're being fair, evaluating ourselves as bettors. For you, at least for me and you, Matt, to not have him on our card this week, we're overreacting to one bad week. We probably are, but I'm right there with you. I think overall to see, and I said this before the playoffs started, I really thought there was a good chance that I would bet Burns, Morikawa, and Hideki every single week because I just kind of that do factor, Wes. They were playing too well running into this end of the season that I was pretty confident one of these guys is going to get home. If Burns wins this week, and he very well could, it's going to hurt as bad as Hideki, and you're laughing about FOMO plays, Wes. I'm going to be pissed off as hell if one of these guys does win because I back off him. I think what's really tough about it, Matt, and this is where I know I'm punishing him too much. No matter what I run, the numbers are going to tell me he's a top 3 at worst approach player in this field. And when we know everything else that Sam Burns can do at an elite level, including being one of the best putters, if not the best putter in this field, and being long off the tee, this should make a lot of sense for him this week.
Do you? And this is how stupid our brains are. And Kelley, you played a ton of poker, and anybody else out there that played a ton of poker, whatever. It's like you don't. It's not as vivid in your memory, like when you suck out, as it is when you lose to a 1-outer or like a 2-outer or something like that. Like he is one of the best players. The stats bear it out. Obviously, one bad week. If you're watching at home, you can see one bad week this past week at the BMW. But it seems like he never made a damn putt whenever I needed him to make a putt. Like whatever. It's like I'm sitting here going, he misses every big putt, yet he gains 4.6, 2.7, 1.4, 4.4, 4.4, 4.05. I mean, it's just like, it's insane to me.
Don't trust your lying eyes, right?
Yeah.
That's one of those eye tests, because we're all into the numbers and the analytics. But then you look, eye test, man, couldn't get there. Like, couldn't make the putt at the end of either open.
Honestly, Matt, I think I'm going to be more pissed off than you this week if he wins, actually, and that would be rare. But like, every week that Matt Brown has bet Sam Burns over the past 4 years where I haven't, there's some voice in the back of my head that I'm just not voicing on this podcast where I'm just like, yeah, the approach numbers aren't good enough. Approach is not good enough. The approach has been so good the past couple months. It's bizarre.
Well, boys, I'll tell you, we will be happy if Collin Morikawa wins this week. He's next on the odds board. You can find him as high as 20 plus 2050 over at DraftKings. And for the final show of the season, we got ourselves a pod play as all three of us end up here on Collin Morikawa.
I don't know why I mean root for it, but yeah.
I kind of maybe could have guessed it whenever we look at what is going to, what you're looking for at this course, what we've all kind of said that we find important. I mean, Wes, it's like, it seems like Collin is just screaming to finally get it done. When you look here, he's found his irons for the vast majority of these tournaments here over the last couple of months. He's found the driver, he's found fairways and things like that. And honestly, as a guy that struggled mightily with the putter for a long time, has only had one bad tournament in the past couple months as well. We've already given our around the green thoughts. If you're in a tournament where we're thinking mid to high teens and maybe even 20, if you're around the green too much, then you're losing anyway. So I kind of toss those out to the side. Collin Morikawa on all three of our cards. Wes, what did you love about Collin this week?
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Matt. He gained with the putter 6 of his last 7 and 9 of his last 12 starts dating back to mid-February. And he's the number 1 player on the PGA Tour for strokes gained approach. You can usually not go wrong with at least being somehow involved with the number 1 iron player on the PGA Tour. Second for scoring average was, by the way, the low 72-hole scorer here 2 years ago in that first year of the Andrew Green renovation. And I never like to put too much emphasis on one shot, but if you're watching the coverage on Sunday, on the par 5 17th, did you see that second shot that he hit right at the pin? And he ends up eagling. He gave one back where he was kind of lurking underneath Clark and Rory and Cantlay, but he was still in the mix. He was on that where they get the graphic on the right side of the screen and you list the top 5, and he's kind of right there. That shot, man, he hits some of the most beautiful iron shots you will ever see. They just look like things of beauty. The trajectory, it is kind of striking, and to hit that shot, and it's like, man, he can do that here. You would think that he's just an ideal fit. I think for this course, despite the fact that he's got good history. I mentioned low 72-hole score. It hasn't been every single year. He's had some inconsistencies. Was 19th here last year out of 30. Was 28th a few years ago. But man, I'm gonna go with the approach, and I'm gonna go with the guys that consistently hit the ball best, and nobody's done it better than he has this year.
Kelley, as we look at him, we were dealing with the injury earlier on in the year, but it seems like you can kind of start to see right there in June, and that was now that's been a couple months removed from all of that and whatever, where he looks like he started to get healthy, and you can see off the tee. That's really where you're really going to find something like that, because as he was talking to us about that, that's where he was feeling it the most on the range, not being able to get full motion through his drives and with his driver and all of that. And so now you look and you start to see he gains in every week except for the FedEx off the tee. And that is another thing that really kind of got me towards Collin this week too.
Yep. Yeah. So some we've all been high on here recently down the stretch of the season. I was the guy that I guessed that if there was a pod play this week, it was going to be Collin Morikawa. Told producers Wyatt Tomchek and Rob Moreno that ahead of time. So I don't know why Rob Moreno's going to get producer credit right now, but he is. Actually, no, I know why, because we have a new pod play sound effect. That's why, and he created it. So thank you. There we go. Yeah, Collin, last 12 rounds. Top 3 in approach, most accurate driver in the field, dead middle of the pack putting, but you guys just went over the putting numbers and the spike in the run he's been on recently. Love Collin. As much as Burns and Hideki would hurt, Morikawa is the one I'm sticking with. He's the guy I've been sticking with here every week, so let's hope we get one home. I will say, Wes brought it up. The results here are interesting. He's gained over 12 strokes on the field. He did that 2 years ago and finished second, and then he lost nearly 8 strokes to the field in 2021 and finished 26th. So I would say a roller coaster for him at this golf course over the years.
Yeah, I think we're rounding into form. It might be too little too late. I mean, it seems like he's playing his very best here at the very end, but maybe he can get across for us here. He cashed a ticket for you last week. Wyndham Clark is sitting at 16-1 out there in the
Matt,
market. Not on any of our cards this week. I mean, look, would it surprise me? I know that would be crazy. I mean, go out and win, that many times in a season or whatever. Wouldn't I guess surprise me all that much in this. But at the end of the day, I can only bet so many people at these shorter numbers and all of that. So couldn't get to Wyndham Clark, but hell, this course at comp-wise, I mean, par 70, 7,400 yards, played par 70, 7,400 yards last week and was able to get it done there. But, Wes, I don't know. Maybe it's like that whole stupid thing that like my brain thinks a guy can't win 2 weeks in a row, which like you obviously can, but it's just like my brain won't let me get there. So didn't get there on Wyndham.
Yeah, 3rd and 8th here, by the way, in 2 appearances in 23 and 24, was not here last year. Certainly well on the short list for Player of the Year candidate. But yeah, I feel like, as ridiculous as it sounds with the 30-player field, like I feel like maybe this is a sell high type of thing here. And I was on him last week and he fit the profile, and certainly with the limited starts here could do well again. But yeah, I'm the same way. I think my brain is working similar too, where, just gonna leave him off this week. I think that he's gonna be pretty widely bet because of how he has obviously played. But there are, even with these great finishes you look at, there are some missed cuts in there too. There are some inconsistencies at where you missed the cut at the Rocket, missed the cut at the Open. The week before he wins at the Byron Nelson, misses the cut pretty badly at the PGA. So there are some inconsistencies there with Wyndham Clark that still may be enough to keep you at bay.
Kelley, at this number as well, like if he doesn't win last week, even if he's third, even if he's third, he's going to be 22 or 24 or 25, and but he won, and now it like cut so much into the odds where it's like, I think my model and given all this, like Wyndham could have ended up a play this week for me if he's at Hovland's number or at Matt Fitzpatrick's number or something like that. But like the win, I think kind of spoiled Wyndham for me this week from an odds perspective, even though I do think he's a good fit for the course and all that. It's just, the win ruined it.
It's a great point on pricing, because that is honestly, it probably boosts our Collin number here a little bit, because that was going to be my last point on Morikawa. I don't know about you guys, but I was pleasantly surprised that we were getting that long of a number on Collin Morikawa. I thought he was going to be sub 20. So that was the only last thing I was going to say on him. So I think it's a great point on Wyndham, because he would definitely be one of the factors in boosting up a number for Morikawa. And yes, he doesn't win that golf tournament. He is several points longer than what he is right now. I've never seemingly been as high on Wyndham as you guys are. I think I might be generalizing too much, but he's very tough for me to figure out and to model, because usually if anything, he's one of the guys I typically underrate. He usually it feels like he ends up having higher finishes than where he models out for me. Like this week's a great example. He's 15th. He's dead middle of the pack in the model for me. That's just over the last 16 rounds. But think about what Wes just said. What do those 16 rounds include? That's a win, a T5, and 2 missed cuts. So it's a little bit of everything that's involved in those last 4 tournaments. And so when you get out of Wyndham, he impresses me when he's on probably more than any golfer out there, because I don't think he's ever going to be able to keep it up. And he gets on these hot streaks that are so unbelievably good that
the caddy switch has also been very good for him, even as annoying as it is, where he's like, okay, good process, where it's kind of that Spieth Greller dynamic a little bit, but it's worked for him and it talks him through it. And one of the things I will say, watching him on Sunday, even though he blew the lead, he still had a share of the lead, but even though he gave it back, his demeanor didn't change. Even though the putting looked off where he made everything on Saturday and then couldn't make anything until late on Sunday, his demeanor never really changed. You saw him kind of step back a little bit and take a second look at some of these putts and some of the shots, but he never really visibly showed signs of frustration.
Yeah,
I felt, and that's a lot of growth in a player.
Yeah, Wes, I thought his comments afterward were very interesting to that point, and I think shows some growth as well, where he kind of just openly admitted, he's like, I wasn't nervous. I had a 5-shot lead, but he's like, my head just wasn't in the game. It was like,
remember, this was the guy that trashed the locker room in Oakmont a couple of years ago at the U.S. Open, so he's grown up a little bit.
Yeah, he pretty much said he needed this thing to get close for his head to get really into it, but those are the moments, right, when that switch gets flipped by him, I never think he's going to be able to keep it up, and then he does, and it's just, he turns into seemingly one of the best players on the planet. But yeah, Wyndham, I'm out on this week.
I'm going to skip to the top of the board here because nobody's on Scottie or Rory this week. I actually just did the Google machine. Hand, foot, and mouth can last up to 10 days in adults, and it says about the rashes can actually, in some cases, turn to blisters, just depending on the severity of whatever and all of that. So, I mean, look, get me out on some dude that has some disease that might have lingering effects with blisters and things and whatever on your hands and feet that you're walking a golf course for 4 rounds and you got to grip a golf club. So, get me out there, and then Rory. I guess I wouldn't talk anyone off of Rory. It's just the price again for the players and the whatever. I'd rather play someone a little bit longer than the price that you're getting there on Rory, so that I don't really have much more analysis than that, Kelley. I don't know if Rory piqued your interest at all. I'm going to guess Scottie did not.
Rory and the driver here at this course, always. Like you said, I didn't bet either one of them. I wouldn't blame anybody for betting either one of these guys, including Scheffler. I wouldn't blame anybody for betting Scheffler. This price, you're getting same odds or longer odds than what you got a week ago on him in a smaller field. We have no idea how the illness is going to affect him. Matt just went over it very fairly, went over what he's reading online. Well, we don't know. He might be fine. He might be worse. He
could have already been on the tail end of it for all we know. Yeah. Whatever.
I mean, I'll throw the other curveball out that he said after the round. The other thing about this disease is it's extremely contagious. And he brought up after his round almost shaking hands with Cameron Young and had to pull himself back from that. Do we know who else Scottie Scheffler played with last week? Because I don't know, and I might be a little more concerned when I find that out.
I still took him. Go ahead, man.
Scottie, Rory didn't make your card. Just quick thoughts here before we get to the last guys that did make our cards.
Well, Rory, 3-time winner here, of course, very capable. But, with Rory, we saw kind of a couple uncharacteristic mistakes when he got in contention. And sometimes he'll make those because Rory is very confident in his abilities. And he's always going to go for it and always think that he could pull the shot off. And when you're going to end up as one of the greatest players of all time, you certainly have a right to think that. But he didn't make it this week, even though he's won here 3 times, certainly capable. And Scottie, by the way, has never been the low 72-hole scorer here, despite being the FedEx Cup winner 2 years ago. Now, he does have a 4th and a 3rd the last 2 years in a couple seconds. So you feel like eventually he's just going to put it all together and win here. So I took him out of play, and that's why I went in the without Scottie market. And quite frankly, it's been working the last couple of weeks. Yeah. So, being a scared coward of Scottie Scheffler has certainly benefited me over the last couple of weeks. So I'm not going to change when, you're kind of searching for something and you find something, even if it's not real and if it's just imagined or whatever, you're still going to stick with it. So I'm going to stick with that without Scottie market this week and think, maybe he's Scottie freaking Scheffler. He might shoot 23 under and be the low scorer here.
I saved our last picks here because I kind of giggled when I saw, because it's all of us just beating our head against the wall. So I love it. It's amazing. So we'll start with you, Wes. The next guy on the odds board is actually Patrick Cantlay. You can find him as long as 16-1 out there in the market. I don't have to continue to tell people that Patrick Cantlay hasn't won since the Eisenhower administration on tour, but yes, it is. We're keeping it going because I'm in the same one, and then so is Kelley as well. So it's great.
You could see the sheepish grin of shame if you're watching this broadcast of betting Patrick Cantlay, who was the runner-up here, by the way, to Tommy Fleetwood, who cashed for us last year. 2nd, 6th, 7th, and 4th in 4 of the last 5 years here at East Lake. And I guess I'm willing to get hurt again, and I'm seeing that he is very popular, which even worries me a little bit more. But I got to stick with my guns, even though this isn't without risk, because Patrick Cantlay, the worst part of his game right now is probably his putting. 95th on tour. That's his worst season in 9 years. Like, he's never been like number one or anything, but he's always been on the higher end for putting. That's always kind of stayed true with him, even though, he takes forever over these putts and the constant little waggles he has. But nevertheless, I guess it works for him. But all other areas of the game are good. Led in fairway proximity last week at St. Louis, 3rd in ball striking, 4th on approach. Led the field here last year on approach, tee to green, and ball striking. And still somehow finished 3 back of Tommy Fleetwood. 3 of his last 8 PGA Tour victories. You mentioned the last victory, Matt. His last victory was actually when Bryson DeChambeau was still on the PGA Tour full time, because that's who he beat in the playoff, the BMW Championship at Caves Valley. But 3 of his 8 PGA Tour victories, and God, that sounds ridiculous to say, because with as much as I bet him, you'd think he'd have like 15 or 16 wins by now. His last one anywhere, of course, was at that BMW. He did win here at East Lake in 2021, the Tour Championship when they were doing the starting strokes, and therefore won the FedEx Cup. So he has been a pretty good player this time of year. I liked what I saw at Belle Reve. I think that he's ready to win. You're certainly not getting a bargain on the price, because I think he's very popular. I think he's $13.25 at DraftKings and without, and I've even seen him as low as like 10 or 11 to 1. So obviously shop around, but I'm going to go a little bit with my gut here. It's not just the numbers, it's a little bit of the gut. And I think maybe that's similar to what you guys are about to bring up with your selections. But Patty Ice, I'm ready to get hurt again. At this point, the pain doesn't exist anymore. You're almost like numb to it, right? So when Patrick Cantlay finishes like 8th yet again, I'll be numb to it and I'll move on.
Kelley, you also on Cantlay here, a little bit different of a deal, as Wes said. I mean, it's the concern, definitely the putter, but if you look over the last 12 rounds, nobody's coming in hotter than this dude. First in the field in approach, tee to green, and ball striking over the last 12 rounds. Hadn't been able to make a putt, and you're going to play him in a placement market.
Yeah, this is, I would say this is the perfect sample size for where the lines of delineation need to exist for Matt, Wes, and Kelley when it comes to Patrick Cantlay. This is enough for Wes to get him on him for an outright ticket. This is enough for me to be on him in a top 10, and Matt is still going to sit on the sidelines completely. I got it. I can't, Wes, I'm there with you, buddy. I can't ignore the approach numbers the past few weeks. They're just disgusting. I mean, 7 strokes over the field last week, 5.6 the week before, 6.7 at a full field Rocket Classic. It's too much for me to ignore, especially at a course where this matters, where he's had success. You can get a top 10 at minus 110, a 30-man field. He's got to beat out 2/3 of the field. I think that's a good play this week.
So I'm going to beat my head against the wall now. I'll raise my hand, and I went back to Ludvig. And so let me go ahead and just lose another bet on Ludvig Åberg, who T4s and 5s and T3s and T7s all over the place. But again, never really felt like he was contending. It's kind of another one of those Fleetwood-esque players here that it's the numbers look pretty, but you never really felt like he was going to win anything this year. Guys, we're in a 30-person field, and are we really in a 30-person field? I understand anyone can win on the PGA Tour, and they're all really, really great players. But let's be honest. We get to the bottom, and
25.
Your Akshays and whatever. Your Akshays and your Bridgmans and your stuff of the world that hadn't played well in forever and all that. I don't think we think they really have a chance to do it. So can he go beat 24 other dudes, Ludvig, with everything that he does well? I mean, you look at the approach numbers. Yeah, it wasn't there last week, but it was for the 3 and 4 months prior to that. The tee off the tee has been there for the 4 months prior. Everything is pretty good for him. I mean, the putter comes and goes. He did at least switch to a mallet putter, and you can see that was the only thing that worked for him last week at the BMW. Finally got rid of that blade putter that was costing him so many strokes. So one last time, just for fun, I'll beat my head against the wall as well with Ludvig, who was 4th overall in my model this week across the everything. So here we go, buddy. Break my heart one more time.
Wes, you back on Ludvig? Because I'm not.
I am not either, but he is my fear factor guy. Like, I think we all have we have that one player that we don't bet, that it's like, he kind of concerns me here a little bit. And that would be Ludvig, who I bet a couple times in recent weeks. Because I think we get dazzled by the talent, and I think we get dazzled by how he hits the ball, and it's just like, man, he is so good, And
those beautiful eyes of his, and the chiseled jaw, and the cheekbone,
that blonde hair,
it's just everything about it.
He's a good-looking Swedish man.
Yeah, but, everything about him.
He was the guy that
he doesn't cash enough checks. Like,
exactly,
come on, man.
Exactly. Like, that's certainly a drawback. And by the way, still looking for that first win this year. I would have thought, if you would have told me he wasn't going to win this year, I would have been very surprised. So he's got one last opportunity here.
Yeah, this is, I don't think this is necessarily bragging because I've missed out on some money, that's for sure. But Ludvig, I've bet a total of 3 times this year, never in the outright market, 1 top 10 and 2 matchups. And that has been it. Matt, I think you and I talked about this like a month ago or something. Ludvig I hit on him when he actually won, so I just feel like I'm like holding all that money that like I love to give away on Siwoo. I'm like, don't take my Ludvig money. I just don't want to burn it this week. So he's always going to be positive for me, and I just can't. I don't want to give it back. I don't want to give it back for some reason.
So here we go. We round things out. Last play of the pod. Kelley has gone back to Xander Schauffele. You've liked him a few different times here the last few weeks.
Dude, this is remember, if you go back about 53 minutes in this podcast, you probably heard us talk about Chris Gotterup. I was convinced I was Gotterup and Morikawa. This is complete price note, so actually listen to what I'm trying not to make fun of myself.
Yeah.
I found Xander Schauffele at 15-1 at Boomers here in town, which I know is not fair to bring up that price is not available to everybody. But Real Shop in Vegas, 15-1 on Xander. I had to rethink everything after that. I thought best I was going to get was 12.5, something like that, on Xander, where I thought he was pretty properly priced there. Seeing him at 15-1 when most shops you couldn't get Sam Burns even at that number, right? Like most of those shops, he was shorter than that. I had to change my thinking after I saw that. So I started with Xander 15-1. I will say my favorite bet of the week is Xander Schauffele top 10. I cannot believe Stations is dealing -137 on that. DraftKings had like a -138. I think Stations did the whole, let's make it 1 cent cheaper for our guys. That's my favorite bet of the week. We're still waiting on that first win, so maybe Wes's do factor comes into play here. We'll see, but he's rounded into form nice, right? T18 the Open, a second at the Rocket, T7 to St. Jude. The results are coming. He has played the best golf at this golf course in this field. I mean, the finishes here are sick. A T4, a second, a fourth. He's never finished worse than T7 in 8 times here. And all I gotta
other than Tiger and Rory, he's the best player ever here at East Lake.
And with him rounding into form, I'm not the biggest Xander Schauffele guy just because I feel like the odds are usually shorter than where I have him at. This week, I think, is the perfect example of this being the exact reverse situation. I thought he belonged closer to 10-1. The fact that I could get him 15-1 made me rethink exactly how I was shaping my card.
Last 24 rounds, Kelley Bydlon, number 1 in the field in total driving. So we want someone to be long and accurate on this course. And Xander Schauffele, last 24 rounds, number 1 in this field in total driving.
And wouldn't it just be like Xander to get the win when his buddy Cantlay and his regular partner, and I'm sure they'll be partnered again at the President's Cup if they get picks, which I think they will. Wouldn't it be like Xander to win when it's like Cantlay's really close? Like Cantlay seems like the obvious guy, right? And then here comes Xander to stone him. Xander already has the 2 majors. Cantlay's still looking for his first one. So, that's got to gripe Patrick Cantlay, though. It's like, my buddy's just better than me.
I mean, Wes, we can dig into these finishes even more. I mean, the worst finish is a T7, and how many times, in over half the times he's teed it up here, he's gained over 7 shots on the field. Like, I'm not the biggest course history guy, but like this is I think
it matters here. I think it matters here, though.
I think it matters here too, and I do think also when we bring up these stats, we got to keep in mind 30-man field. That's going to skew things a little bit, but still, I think it matters. Wes, I'm with you. I'm not the biggest guy on it usually, but the fact that the recent form is there, the course history is there, yeah, I'm in on Xander this week.
Yeah, I mean the course materially has changed, but still, I mean it's not completely
right. Yeah, it's true.
I mean like. All of the other, like the early finish, I mean, it's playing 300 yards longer now than it did back then and whatever and all that. But like still, it lets you know, though, he's got an eye for this one for sure. So guys, if you hung around with us this long, do appreciate it. Hopefully you understand why we did what we did. It's the last one of the year. We gave you some thoughts on every single player in the field. Wes has Cantlay, Morikawa, and Henley. Kelley on Xander. Morikawa has a placement there on Cantlay. I'm going to beat my head against the wall on Ludvig yet one more time. Morikawa and Hideki for me. And that's going to do it here for us, guys. Do not go ahead and leave without hitting the subscribe button. Go ahead and do the little thumbs up, all the stuff like that. And also come back next week. We'll have our little award show. We'll have our personal picks. It won't be a pod deal. Wes will have his, Kelley will have his, I'll have mine, all the things like that. And kind of give you our final thoughts here as we put this season to a rest. Still need to talk about the new playoff format that they've decided to go to in 2028 as well. So we'll hit that next week and give you our thoughts on that. So hit those little subscribe buttons, hit the follow buttons, do all the different things like that. Let us know in the comments. Who do you like this week? Who do you think finally gets it done here? Nice big $40 million prize pool for these guys. The last place guy is still going to get $355,000. So go out there and shoot 85 all 4 days. Who cares? You get $355,000 for doing it. For Wes, for Kelley, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your Tour Championship bets.